Welcome to this week's episode of Marijuana Mind with yours truly, Dr. Davis, and my capricious co-host, Cynthia Brewer.
I feel like that was made up on the fly.
No, I thought of
Not
it
a
2 weeks
fan.
ago. What are you talking about?
Capricious. Capricious.
The good thing is I got through the intro today without you interrupting me and laughing, and we have a great guest today.
We do, but I want to mention one thing
Yes,
really
please
fast.
do. Please do.
You made a mistake by telling me and the listeners that you hated the beginning of the podcast because you would always start with your mouth open. And so what did I do? I went onto YouTube and I took the thumbnail of every single time your mouth was open. So now that's the picture that comes up on every video of our
Are you
podcast.
kidding me?
It's because, I also made a TikTok the other day, just because sometimes you have to like promote what you're doing to the environment and, or, the potential guests we could have. So I made this little ticket that's had a lot of review, positive, feedback. Here we go.
Oh, you show you with your cleavage out looking so good, and me with
that's me with a grill, and that's you. And you in the bathtub.
Oh my God. That's
First
my
of all,
hot tub.
the cleavage was not intentional. That's considered unintentional cleavage.
Unintentional, right? That's a term, right? Unintentional cleavage.
Yeah, just like, accidental F-bomb or something. I don't know. It wasn't intended. I had to take a photo for our last podcast. You were staring one way from your hot tub, and I was staring the other way with a liquid death in my hand. And Ty, our amazing social media producer and talent acquisition, had us facing each other for the preview post because he's a freaking genius. We miss you, Ty. Which brings us to our amazing guest today. Justin, do you want to do the intro?
I mean, I think the name says it all. Jerry
Everybody
Garcia.
just hold on to your socks. The Marijuana Mind is proud to present our famous guest today, Jerry Garcia.
Probably had his ice cream, our very own Jerry Garcia.
His ice cream.
Yep.
So
it's
you're
one of the best
not
flavors.
The per se Jerry Garcia, but I would like to say you're the Jerry Garcia, right?
I think at this point, how's everybody doing? But yeah, I think I'm the Jerry Garcia, the recruiter,
Yeah, you're the most famous guest name we've had on to date. Yes. And look at that little ham. I just freaking love your dog. He's got a giant Dalmatian and his name is Ringo Starr, which is adorable. And this thing is like, you could ride him, but he loves the camera and the camera loves him.
He does. He's been caged up, so I had to take him out for a little bit. I was like, hey, let's just leave him a little more around, It'll be nice.
Did you give him a good treat because he's a good boy?
I gave him a ball, but he started hearing me talking. He's like, let me see what's going on over here.
Oh my gosh, we are big dog people. Well, I love dogs. Justin owns a dog.
Oh, what type of dog?
It's under his desk right now.
No, he's actually getting groomed.
He's a poodle.
I just got bad news, actually, that they're going to have to shave him because normally he has a puppy cut, even though he's pretty big. But they're going to have to shave him down, so I'm not looking forward to that.
Why?
Because he's really cute with his big fluffy do, and now.
No, but why do they have to shave him?
Oh, he had too many mats.
So I also have a poodle.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Oh. The old one. He's 15 years old. He's sleeping right now, and the mat problem is so difficult to go through all the time, and I hate when they have to shave him down. He looks like so vulnerable.
Yes.
Does it look like a bear that gets wet, like that internet sensation of like the hairless bear or the wet koala, where it looks like a nightmare?
I would say more like a wet koala for sure. Not like a nightmare. He just looks a little bit more.
No, wet koalas look really, really scary. Just Google it. Take time out of your day, listeners and visitors and visual watchers or whatever. Google hairless bear or wet koala and tell me that's not going to give you nightmares.
Isn't that a porno term from the 80s?
No, actually, contrary to popular belief, Justin, it's not. It is just a wholesome, scary fun that you can Google stuff that has nothing to do with porn. You know that, right?
Right, but wet koala, I mean, come on.
No, it's really scary, actually. If you could do that while I introduce this wonderful guest, Jerry Garcia. Jerry, you graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in history and sociology. You work currently for Growing Talent, which has been a brand that we have talked about many times on the podcast because our wonderful Ty also is a recruiter for that company up in Illinois. And he definitely was excited about sending you our way because we get to talk about all things cannabis, recruiting, and your new brand, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So tell me a little bit about working with Ty.
Working with Ty has been great. I have seen him, grow with his career, you know.
Isn't he the best?
He's honestly the best, puts his mind to it and he just makes things happen. Honestly, it's been a pleasure working with him. I remember when he came in, he was, kind of new to the talent acquisition,
Yeah.
and he picked it up like no other, right?
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I hired him after he was working at Domino's as a driver, and then he was sampling. Then I pulled him in and he helped me with the application. Then he was like director of logistics for sample procurement. Then he was like hiring people, and then he left.
He's on top of it. I still have him listed because, of course, I got the contact through Cynthia as best assistant ever. That's how he comes up in my phone.
Well, that's what I had in my phone since he was helping me with the application in 2019. And I never changed it, but I'm going to be marrying him and Brenda together in matrimony.
He was telling me that. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? I'm so excited. We had our pre-wedding call where we talk about the stuff I shouldn't say, and it went really well, I think. And then Brenda didn't cry, which is good. She seems excited about having me participate, and I'm getting more and more excited because I got my save the date the other day, and I am going to save that date. So besides working with one of my most favorite people in the world, you are kind of like capitalizing on the fact that your name is a famous name, Jerry Garcia, Grateful Dead, and you started a brand. Tell us a little bit about Grateful Recruiting.
So yeah, I mean, a little bit about it, right? So I started off in the tech company, right? A tech startup. I got to be, got to see what it works, how it is working with an entrepreneur CEO. And from there, we grew a great company to like 10,000 people. I was employee 50. So that was great to see. But the name Jerry Garcia really took off when I joined GTI.
That's right. Back in 2018, you worked for Green Thumb Industries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Jerry Garcia Jr., by the way. My dad is also Jerry Garcia, and I didn't know much about the Grateful Dead at all. It wasn't until my interview at GTI, where Pete Cadence, the CEO at the time, our co-founder, he was interviewing me, and he points to a poster in the wall, and it's the Grateful Dead poster, like the
trippy one.
Concert.
Yeah,
I was cool. He's like, do you know how great this is that I'm interviewing right now? Jerry Garcia.
And you're like,
clueless. I didn't understand. Like, I was like, oh, cool. That's a cool poster. That's great. But he told me a little bit more about it. And then from there, that's kind of where I started getting a little bit more recognition. That like the name has helped a lot. But overall, fast forward to now as I'm working with Growing Talent and kind of building my brand a little bit more. I always write on my journal like 3 words of encouragement, right? Like, positivity, something like that, right? And it usually is grateful since before I, joined the cannabis industry. So now that, I have Jerry Garcia, he's the Grateful Dead. To make a note to him as well and my name, I included Grateful Recruiter because I always am very grateful for everything that I do and where I'm at and being in this great industry. So that's why I went with the Grateful Recruiter. And, I also like helping people with their resumes, with their interviews, and because it's nerve-wracking when people go interview. I'm nervous right now.
It sucks. No, don't be nervous. But I mean, I haven't had to do it in so long, but thinking about it gives me anxiety. My dad actually is a headhunter. So he's done it for so long. He's top dog in the company. They haven't dabbled in cannabis quite yet. I don't think they are, but that's what he does. And he, finds people for jobs and then all of a sudden Ty goes to do it and he tells me about it. I'm like, that sucks. I would hate to have to not be the interviewer, but be the interviewee. Like thinking about that gives me anxiety, being put on the spot.
I mean,
You're a better interviewer.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's nervous for both sides. I mean, when you're literally going in there to get judged by a person in 30 minutes and hopefully they like you enough to work with you, right? So how do you
True.
decide what to say, what to do? And even for me, like that's why I think Ty picked it up so great and awesome because it's hard also to interview people, right? Like what questions do I ask? Like, do I know enough about the job? Especially a lot of recruiters, for example, we do when you're interviewing for cultivation versus a CPG role, it's a whole different conversation, and you start talking about hydroponics and stuff like that, versus digital marketing strategy. So you're like so spread thin, and it's like, what questions do I ask? And that's kind of like a little bit of an art. But from the interview perspective, it's just so nerve wracking. And I think one thing that I always tell everybody is embrace the pause a little bit, uh, listen to the question and you'll do great. I think part of being a recruiter is prepping people and hyping them up, you gotta hype them up.
I love that. I love that positive, like support. I would be the worst interviewer ever.
Yeah,
I know you got
would
something
try
to
to
say,
scare people
Justin.
and make them cry for
No, I
sure.
want to ask them really weird questions. Like, how would you describe a jellyfish to a blind person? Like I would think that would be something thought-provoking or like funny or inspiring, but that could actually be really, really big mind F for somebody who's not prepared
But
to.
maybe you want to see how they respond under pressure to a question, obscure question.
Right, like sell me this pen. Like I actually looked up for no reason answers to that question. And like people actually put answers like this is what you should do and suggesting like to do this to answer that question. But I got that from Wolf of Wall Street when he's like talking about good salespeople, like sell me this pen. He's like, here, I need you to sign, and oh, I need a pen. Oh, it's great. But like, how are you supposed to know as a recruiter with a bunch of different opportunities and jobs that need to be filled, what questions you're going to ask and know that the answer is legit for a cultivator if you don't know about hydroponics and if their cultivation experience is considered enough? Like,
Yeah. I think it goes down to passion. I mean, you after speaking with so many people, right? You kind of start seeing who, for lack of better terms, kind of nerds out about their topic.
that's true. That's a good point.
If I mention hydroponics and someone goes into a full conversation and I end up learning from it, that means a lot, and I think that's where you kind of have to analyze, okay, this is what they said, and then also aligning it to what the client needs, right? Or the business needs, right? You kind of say, okay, this is how well versed they have to be, say, in hydroponics, since we're running with that, right? And if they, kind of go into real experiences, and I think that's something that everybody should know, right? When you talk about your experience, you shouldn't generalize it, right? You should give specific situations of where it happened so that could get a good view of how you handled that situation and essentially learn about what was your role in the process. And I think we have this idea that it's always me, and I mean, it's always we as a team, right? And we carried the strategy afloat and did X, Y, and Z. But sometimes in the interviews, you have to talk about yourself and what did you
Oh
specifically,
yeah.
and I think that's very important. There's
It's
no,
a
there's
weird
no,
business phrase to be like, we need to send an update to the client. And you mean me, right?
yeah,
Like when people say we, like we really need to drill down and focus on sales. Okay. So what are you going to do? Because you're looking at me while we're having this we conversation. So, but I like that you said the passion thing, because someone could ask me about like medical doctory and etc. And I would not have any information to even like kind of
But you're
fake
passionate.
it. I can't fake being passionate about being a doctor. You are actually passionate about being a doctor, so you would be fine. So if someone asked me about cannabis, yeah, I'm going to go off on a tangent. But like, I think that's a good sign. So if you don't know shit about the job you're applying for, do some research and act super excited about it, and you're going to get the job.
You quoted Wolf of Wall Street. What was the Leonardo DiCaprio movie where he disguised himself as various roles? Remember, he was a pilot,
that was Catch Me If You
doctor.
Can.
Catch Me If You Can. You remember he became a doctor?
True story, and so was Wolf of Wall
And
Street.
he passed
True story.
he passed the boards in actual true life, didn't he?
He faked being a doctor.
But passed the boards.
And no, I don't think he took the test. I think he just pretended to be a doctor.
I
And
think he actually passed the boards. I think as part of the story, like the follow-up story.
I like Wolf of Wall Street way better when I'm high. Like, it is hilarious. And there's a lot of parts I can't talk about because people will judge me for liking those parts. So we'll just skip it for now. But so you worked for GTI, so you had that cannabis experience.
I want to know what brought you into GTI? Like, were you purposely, did you want to be in the cannabis industry, or was it happenstance?
And they're in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, apart from them being in Chicago, the company that I worked for, the tech startup, that turned into it changed their model, and they laid off a lot of people. So really, what I did was just I had started a new job right away, like 2 weeks after the layoff. I was at a staffing agency, and literally the second day, GTI contacts me, and they're like, "Hey, we saw your profile. We really like what we saw, and do you want to come in and interview?" And I did, and I went through the process. It just kind of happened with the opportunity, just setting my resume out there and just networking a little bit more.
That's what happens with a lot of our people, and that's what happened with me. It just kind of worked synergistically with the goals of my business partners. But I think a lot of cannabis companies are seeking people with no cannabis experience. They don't want you to come from another brand, really, because you're going to carry over the stuff you learned from there. They want you to be green, no pun intended, green, and just ready to be like in the shit, like living the cannabis life, the dope life.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct for certain positions, right? And I think that's something very, very, very important that people should know, right? I think many people that are trying to break into the cannabis industry, they're like, I have no transferable skill sets, but you do. Most likely you do. For example, bud tender positions or cannabis consultants, the best people that always get promoted and stuff like that are usually Starbucks employees and beauticians.
I love Starbucks and weed.
Interesting stats.
But
I'm getting your nails done.
The over-caffeinated look in my eye and my perfectly manicured nails. No, I think it's weird to me when people say, I'm going to be in the cannabis industry, so I went and I took these classes at this cannabis school. And then they go to apply for a job and they're like, I went and took these 18 hours of coursework from this cannabis school that showed up in my county. And they're like, yeah, we don't care.
Okay, wait, I have a counter argument to that.
Okay.
A lot of these people, let's say they're going to work in a dispensary, for example, they are acting in many cases, right? Like, we only have so long to speak with someone as a physician and tell them things. We can't tell them about every individual little thing. And you go into these dispensaries and they have a plethora of options to choose from. And so these people are acting almost like a pseudo pharmacist and salesman simultaneously. Right. And you want them to have some level of understanding and education and not just base everything off of, their stoner experiences.
But it's not going to be at a school that you went to locally that just popped up overnight when the cannabis industry came up.
I mean, what do they teach at these schools? They
teach like the history of prohibition of cannabis. They'll teach a little bit about like the different, genetics, but at the end of the day, it's not like all the dispensaries are using the God's honest truth about genetics. And so whatever they learn could be complete opposite in practice. So I think for salespeople, they're like, do you smoke weed? And they'd be like, maybe, if it won't get me in trouble, if answering yes. And then they say you're hired. So if you smoke weed, I don't want someone trying to sling weed or sell me weed that hasn't ever smoked weed before.
I want to be a cannabis professor.
I think you should start your own school.
Can you recruit me into being a cannabis professor?
No, but I can refer you to our friend Jerry Garcia.
That's who I'm speaking to.
Oh,
don't you see me making
our guest
with him?
I think you guys are both right when it comes to that. I think education is key, like knowing what you're talking about, right? Like, I think Justin said it right. Like, you are kind of being like a pharmacist in a sense, and people are going to come in with their medical, problems, like whether it be, swelling or something like that. And I think education is super key. Like knowing about terpenes and cannabinoids and stuff like that is super important.
That's different though, because that's like industry knowledge that like you should say, listen, if you need to get some sleep, I'm going to suggest an indica, which everyone knows will be, sleepy. And maybe if you don't like citrus, I'll suggest something piney. But what Justin's referring to is people playing doctor. Like, oh, do you have an ailment? You have cancer? Okay, you should take this medicine, like as if they even know, and not consulting their doctor about the best product because he doesn't have a lot of resources to pull from on what works for cancer patients. But the dispensary people will talk about anything. They'll be like, this will work for your cancer. That'll
Yeah,
work.
but even like this is what you should take for sleep, buy this, this is going to work for you. Even that to an extent is, what I'm talking about.
Does that annoy you?
Sometimes, what annoys me is not necessarily that they're doing that, because they're going to do that, right? It's going to
Yes.
happen. And it also does help patients, to have someone that can advise them in there. But I guess what bugs me is a lot of times they contradict doctors, or they tell the patients what they need, even if it's not what the doctor said, or that their doctor is wrong, or they need to go talk to their doctor because they're going to need more milligrams.
Someone told me to switch my doctor.
Yeah. So that's what annoys me, right? And
Yes.
meanwhile, they're really selling a product from a dispensary. They're working, but if you do a scientific study, you have to say what your biases are, but they don't have to, say what their biases are. They're just telling people things like
If you walk into a True Leave and ask them, who should I medicate with? They're going to be like, right here. You're at the place. They're not going to say, go down the street to move. They've got the better, So you can't say that either because you can't be biased and you can't suggest one company over another.
I can do it if there's a particular reason to. I'm not
A
going to.
legitimate reason. But if someone says, Doc, who has the safest medicine in the state?
Mhm.
What's your answer going to be?
Well, that's not something I can answer. But
Neither can the dispensary workers that he
but
places in these
if
roles.
I knew information, like I knew all of the studies that were all of the what are COAs that were
COAs.
coming back, and I compared the COAs, and I saw that there was a pattern of certain companies not being as diligent as other companies. I could say that there's no problem with
You
me
could
recommending one
if we
company over
got there.
another.
But his role as a recruiter, I would think, is 10 times more difficult because you don't always know the ins and outs of every cannabis brand and if they're a good company. Sometimes you might be slinging positions for a company that ends up embarrassing themselves. Has that ever happened to you?
No, 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 no. I've been, I think one thing, whenever I work with a client or something like that, is I also vet them out, right? It's not like
Good.
any role. I think it's important for the cannabis industry to work with people that are gonna have, good outcomes overall, right? And also deliver a good candidate experience and employee experience. I think employer branding is all, especially if you want to continue your business growing, right? You have to have a good brand, a good employee brand, teach your employees right. And I think that's where our vetting process comes into play, right? We make sure that, hey, what's your employee culture? Let's talk to the managers. Let's see what type of operations you have. What do your operations look like? And that's like a whole different side back end of the recruitment industry, right? Where you have to vet your clients very well in order to ensure that your candidates are in a good working space. Because as a recruiter, your candidates are gold. Essentially,
Yes.
you want to create a network. You want to create solid
Mhm.
relationships with them. And if they have a bad experience, they're never going to work with you again.
Oh
And
yeah, I abuse all of my employees, like emotionally. But I'm just kidding. I don't. But like GTI, for instance, I like their company. I like their brand. I like their corporate structure. I know a lot about them as a company because they've been very forward, open about certain things that they do and certain things that they won't do. A
Sounds like
lot of
somebody's
our
trying to get recruited by a company.
No, I'm saying I don't want to work for the cannabis side on that side. I like the lab testing side. It feels like it's somewhat cleaner, but not so much sometimes. But I mean, there are companies that I would absolutely not want to send a heartbeat to. Like I wouldn't want someone to work there just knowing what I know, if they were like, hey, do you have any good candidates and want to hire somebody, I'd be like, I don't know anybody that wants a job, because I wouldn't want them to go through some of the nightmare stuff that your dog in the background is killing me, that I've heard about from the inside, but I'm not going to go and bash them. GTI is a good company, but like there are some not so great companies. So one question I want to ask you is you grew up in Chicago. So Chicago has been known from time to time to have a lot of talented rappers, right? So like Chance the Rapper is one of them. Actually, let's go one, two. You name one, I name one. Let's see how much Chicago rapper knowledge you got. Chance the Rapper is one. Give me another one.
Vic Mensa.
Okay, Chief Keef.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I know. Justin?
Yeah, I don't know any.
I want to say Mr. West, the old Kanye West, but he was actually born in Atlanta.
Yeah, he's from Atlanta. Maybe from Atlanta. Okay, Lupe Fiasco.
Common.
Kanye.
Twista.
Who I met at a club in Atlanta when I was younger. Soulja Boy.
B Herbo.
See, I'm just saying, I knew this was going to be a great game, and he could follow suit. And
yeah, you're really keeping up much better than most people could have.
Yeah, actually, I'm very impressed with this. So, Vic Mensa is one of the rappers you mentioned. He just actually started his own cannabis brand called 93 Boys with a Z, Justin, because I know you're going to ask. And it's focused on reinvestment into the communities that have been adversely affected by the cannabis prohibition. You should work with him. That's it. Wasn't a question. It was a suggestion. And introduce me.
I do know Vic.
You do?
Remember, yes. I know. So fun story. I went to this high school in Chicago. It's called Lane Tech. Chance the Rapper's wife played basketball there.
Oh man.
He would come and visit. She was, I think, a year older than me, and he would come and visit and meet some of the guys. And got to meet one of my the quarterback for my football team, which I played in, and his name is now Tokyo. He's a rapper as well. And I went to a Benzinga event here. That's the Benzinga event here in Chicago, and I see my old friend Tokyo, and I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I work with Vic Mensa, and we're promoting the brand 93 Boys." And then that's how I got acquainted to Vic Mensa, and we are, definitely having conversations. But he's so focused right now with his Ghana trip. He did a concert over there, and now he's kind of finishing that off. But now he's starting to focus a little bit more on 93 Boys. But yes, I do know Vic, and I do know that team pretty well.
Can you tell him I said hi?
Yes, of course. Of course.
That is so cool. That's like a full circle right there. Now I love Chief. All the rappers I mentioned are like my favorites. So like Chief Keef being one of them, which he's not for everybody, but neither am I. And I love that. But the 93 Boys is a brand that I like, that he's reinvesting in communities that have been hurt by prohibition. But rumor has it that like P. Diddy might be purchasing Cresco, which will make him the largest most successful cannabis owner in the United States of America. Now, I know P. Diddy has that long cannabis money, but he did mention bringing on board other rappers that might also want to contribute to this, like minority owned and operated, very, very large cannabis company. Have you heard the same things? I mean, this was as of a couple of, I would say maybe 2 months ago, this was in talks. Cresco's a big company, and so is P. Diddy. That brand is big too. What do you think could happen if all these rappers get together and start growing weed?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they talk about it in their songs, and they definitely have some industry knowledge for sure, and they know what strains are good, they know what to do with it. And I think it's just the reinvestment in the neighborhood that would be huge. And I think that's something that should definitely be done, right? And I think just representation in the community, I think, is huge, and it just gives people like hope, right? Coming from the south side of Chicago, I think that's huge. Even in the south side of Chicago right now, you only have like 3 dispensaries there, right? And compared to like the north side and more affluent areas, right? So I think it's very necessary for that to start happening and to start creating jobs for these communities. And I think that's super important for that to happen. So I would love to see that happen. I think with P. Diddy joining and what he could do with his money as well is great. I see Vic Mensa doing it as well, employing people that, look like us and represent Chicago differently is great. So I love seeing that, and I think it should happen a little bit more as far as representation and just social equity overall.
Yeah, social equity seems to be like a very large focus of the cannabis space since last year, going into this year with new markets coming online. I mean, it's funny when like Wiz Khalifa has a cannabis brand that's being sponsored, like that he uses in conjunction with True Leaf. And then you've got Mike Tyson, who has a cannabis brand with Move. And then we've got, Marshawn Lynch, Hallowed Be Thy Name, who has his own brand, Doty Blunts, out in the West Coast. I love you so much, Marshawn. Please come on the show. And so I love that there are people that are like, and Sean Kemp's Cannabis. Gary Payton has a strain named after him, which I think is phenomenal.
Heisman as well, right?
You don't really see like a lot of, and maybe I'm wrong, but like the ownership of a lot of these big companies used to be really diverse, not just with like diversity in different types of people, but also in gender. And it then just kind of sizzled out to old white men that become really rich, and they create these monstrosity companies that are making a shit ton of money, and they're just printing it all day. And then you get people that are like, you know what? I know more about weed than you do because I've smoked weed longer than you've been working and making money off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And everybody seems to be really successful at it. And more so than the people that just kind of started dabbling because it was a very lucrative industry. So I can't think of one celebrity that's like a white celebrity cannabis brand.
It's a challenge.
Like you don't see like Dr. Phil's cannabis. I mean, I would try it, but like you've got Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson making ear-shaped gummies together in conjunction with each other. That's like bringing two worlds together that were once, biting each other's heads off in conjunction over weed. I love it.
Yeah, no, I think, well, Ric Flair too, right? He has one.
Everybody has one. I want one. I mean, I don't need my own brand, but I'm just saying, like, I love it that you can just pick up and start growing weed and putting your name on it too. Now, if Mike Tyson's gummies taste horrible, because his weed is not that bad. I did participate in a
Where'd
little
you
of
try
his
that?
2.0. And I love the names of his genetics. Knockout OG, like right uppercut to the stomach, right hook to the face. That was his 1-2. He's the champ.
Yep.
So I'm in Vegas. Anyways, he's gonna be on the show one day. But I really think that it's the social equity platform should have been a focus of the cannabis industry from the inception, and it kind of got diverse, and then we like went away from that, and I feel like it's starting to come back, and we're going to see some really good genetics and good weed and acceptance, hopefully.
I can't wait, and I think it goes back to like the customer service. I think people forget how it all started, right? Like when before legalization, right? It was you trusting your dealer, right? And I think just having
Derek.
that trust is so important. And with these celebrities that you just mentioned, right? Like like for example, Vic Mensa talks about weed a lot in his songs, so you have that trust, right, from that perspective. And I think that's what some of these brands kind of sometimes forget, right? It's all about trust, and it's about developing a relationship with people. And I think that's going to create a whole different spectrum of trust and boost, companies and social equity overall.
I think people should be really picky about what brands that they're going to sponsor under their name. Like I would not want to have Guy Fieri's weed under my name, or like, and I know that sounds really weird, but like I don't think I can recall him ever talking about smoking blunts and getting high, or like who is the lady that used to be on the morning show, Kathy Lee Gifford blunts. OG Gifford blunts, like I just wouldn't buy that weed, but I would totally buy Marshawn Lynch's weed because I know he smokes. He's been open about smoking. Ricky Williams, obviously his brand is taking off because it's called the Heisman too, which is great. But I trust that he would make really good weed. He's not going to put his name on like Reggie, and I think Vic would do it. And I think P. Diddy would do it. I can think of more people I wouldn't buy weed from than people I would.
Yeah.
My dealer's name was Derek, and he had a black backpack. It was a JanSport, and he was always on a bike
Not a skateboard.
or a skateboard.
There was this TikTok video where someone's either delivers a blunt, but he knows that her parents are home, so he delivers it in a frappuccino. But she had to open it up and like, but it's just that type of care that I'm saying, right? Like he went above and beyond, and I think that's just so important, right? Like, oh, he gets it, he gets like, hey, this is still stigmatized. Let me help you out and make sure you
Yeah.
know the problems of it.
There's some drug dealers that take Venmo.
Yeah.
Like talk about like adapting to the community and the times. Now
Do they
the
have a little?
reason
Does
Go ahead.
Venmo have a little icon for like a blunt or something? You can put like, what's it for? Blunt.
you
And
just
it
say
comes-
gift or like gas money. I don't know. I think I might, Zelle somebody some money for something. I'm just not going to get really specific about what it's for.
It'd be good if there was a little
That's
like
dumb.
420 sign, that people know, and they'll,
But then
everyone
the
puts,
cops would know it
everyone
too,
puts
and they would just
giraffe.
look for that.
Yeah, but how can they prove that if you say giraffe, you're a drug dealer?
Well, because you just like outed the one emoji that nobody like was gonna know. But yes, so I like the fact that you are very focused on encouraging these applicants, these interviewees to be, comfortable with the whole grateful like recruiting side of your brand, career coaching them, development guidance, because it is probably a really crappy feeling to be unemployed, wanting to be in an industry that seems impossible to get into or break into. What is something that you see every day that is something that you're not really excited about? What are some of like the hurdles that people are facing mostly that you've noticed?
Good
I
question.
think there's quite a few. I think when people make the decision that they want to go into cannabis, right? Um, One of the hurdles to getting them to join cannabis is the benefit side of it, the unionization of it, right? And kind of also like how well they take care of the workers, what are the hours like, and stuff like that. And I think
Mhm.
getting and the other one is the stigma around it. Like for example, when I joined the cannabis industry, right? I'm a first generation college graduate, and when I told my parents, hey, I'm gonna work for
Me
GTI,
too.
they were like, they come from Mexico, so their perception of cannabis is completely different, right? They were like, this is bad, this is violent, whatever, right? So they were like, are you, who owns this company? Are you gonna be working with like the real cartel drug? Like, don't do it, don't do it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles of getting people to
Mhm.
work in the industry, right? Is doing away with the stigma from a industry perspective, like, hey, this is not what you think it is. This is, not going to look bad on your resume. If anything, it's going to look great on your resume, right? And I think that's probably one of the hurdles, getting people cool with the fact that, hey, this is safe to join, this is not legal, and the stigmas are different, right? And I think I saw it firsthand too. Like I got to be in Erie, Pennsylvania, and recruiting over there, and I got to see people that were like, I need this because I have a lot of problems, addictions, and whatnot, and this is the only thing that keeps me, or PTSD, for example, this is the only thing that keeps me like sane in a sense, right? And I think just seeing that side of the community is so helpful, and I think that's what's missing, those success stories, and bringing those to more urban communities where they're like, they've been stigmatized for such a long time, but seeing this whole new other perspective of how helpful cannabis is, right? And how the conversation should be open. And I think that's also another hurdle that I try to get to kind of on a daily basis. Like, hey, working for the cannabis industry is it's not illegal. It's not going to be a dent on your resume. It's not going to look horrible. It's quite different. You're working for a startup industry, not just a startup company, a startup industry, and it'll make you a stronger professional overall.
I would love to say that like working for a cannabis company will never affect you in the long run because it'll be positive, but like people should be aware of the judgment side. So like if I was working in a cannabis business and then I wanted to become an ER nurse, that's not I can't take that path, can I, Justin?
You probably could as long as you're not doing it simultaneously, but it
Why
might
would I
be.
ever stop smoking weed?
I think it would hurt you more if you were if you decided you wanted to be a principal of a school, that kind of position, something like that.
Okay,
A
playing devil's
physician.
advocate. I went to school, hypothetically, this is not truth. Hypothetically, I go to school for nursing. I
Mhm.
decide I don't want to be a nurse right now because cannabis business is like so booming. So I go to a recruiter and they place me into a wonderful company. I love it. But then I decide, you know what? Cannabis is helping people medically so much and the benefit. I want to go back to nursing. Is
Mhm.
that an easy transition?
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah, I
What
don't
if
think.
I'm a pot smoker
If they
and the
test,
nurse?
yeah, if they test you, nursing obviously is not friendly to cannabis use for any
So I
reason.
could essentially spend a
Now,
bunch of money on college.
actually,
I'm
this
tying this back to a past guest that we had.
let's ask Jerry though. In a state like Illinois, where it's recreationally legal, is there the same kind of prejudice against it for professionals, like a nursing professional, as
Or
versus
law
here it's
enforcement.
yeah, or right, versus here it's not just generally legal yet. So I think there's more problems and less protection.
That's a great question. I think if you're a user and you try to, join a job, I think the most important thing is to see what type of job is it, right? If you're a
Mhm.
nurse and you're any type of under any influence, you might deter some patient away, right? You might not feel the safest, essentially, right? Even if you could be fully functional, right?
Mhm.
So it
They won't even hire you because they're going to drug screen you first.
exactly.
So you're going to be like blacklisted. So we
But
have to
you
tell
could
people the truth, which is going to be you can't transition into this life and out as if it never happened.
but I think you could transition in and out, as a nurse. It's more about, are you using cannabis actively? That's the question, not if you've ever been in the industry.
I feel like everybody in the cannabis space smokes weed. And if they don't, that's weird. And they're probably a narc.
I think it's going to hurt you more in professions where, they're looking at your resume and things that you've done and deciding to hire you or not. So maybe, some company on Wall Street or financial investment or something where you're in education, like trying to be, on the school board or principals, where
What
they're
does that
really
have to do with smoking weed? Because I'm molding the minds of the future. Like if I smoke weed, I'm going to do it wrong.
I just think that's where theoretically it might hurt you more to have that on your resume.
I don't
Just
think anyone
seeing it.
ever goes to school or like lives their life thinking one day I want to be a principal of an elementary school.
And people go to school for that.
Hashtag dreams, hashtag goals, hashtag blessed.
But even let me give you an example of this is not even getting hired for something. Just well, first of all, there is, and I will tell you that there is a lot of prejudice, in the physician community
Yes.
against physicians that do it just in general. But okay, so here's the example, doesn't really have to do with that either. So trying to get insurance, not
Yes.
malpractice insurance, just a general liability insurance, right? So nothing to do really with the practice of medicine, just because people are coming here, we're having, yoga classes and events. And I just want, if someone's on the premises doing yoga and they fall, that the building's covered with a little extra overhead, right? So they're like, okay, well, what kind of practice, do you have? And I tell them, and it's
I'm a
like,
doctor.
it, right, but they ask, your specialty, and of course they can look you up, and that's it. That's the end of the conversation. Like, no, you
Really?
don't understand. Like, this is not malpractice, has nothing to do with the medical practice. I have nothing directly to do with cannabis anyways, but it's just for, the building and people coming on for events.
That's messed up.
They won't even talk to me anymore.
That's weird because when we have drivers that we are employing by,
Mhm.
like, we don't use, I don't think we have. I think sometimes we've wanted to. I know that Growing Talent specifically is incredibly competitive with their pricing structure. So like they will place an employee and then like I'm a business owner, he's a
Mhm.
recruiter. I need him to find me a top tier candidate for a lab director. Okay. So he goes into his like resource library of candidates that have submitted a resume, and he'll probably keyword a few things, but he's going to go and vet that candidate for me because I'm too busy to handle that stuff. Right. And so he finds me like a perfect candidate and then interviews them, does all the hard work, does the legwork for me because every market's different. So it makes sure he's good for the market. And then we get to meet him, we get to hire him, and then we don't have to pay for the services until after he's been successfully like probationary period done. And then whatever that fee is, which it's okay, we don't have to talk about that part. But the fact that you guys are waiting for that candidate to be not just started, not just comfortable, but also through the like the initial period before you're going to say, okay, we found you an ace. Now pay our fee. And your fee, I have heard it is incredibly competitive. So anyone out there that's looking to find qualified candidates for their cannabis company, like Growing Talent is where you need to go, because I've heard a bunch of different recruiting fees and theirs is incredibly competitive and way more like practical in its implementation. So
Yeah, no,
they need to go to Jerry Garcia, ask for Jerry.
please do. I mean, yeah, I think the fees are definitely competitive, and I think we just want to make it easy for people to join the industry as well, and also keep the industry highly professional and change the stigma through employees. So I think, you know, speaking on the fees and stuff like that, like just making things accessible like that just makes it easier for everybody in a sense, right? So I think that's super important. And
There's
yeah,
value in that.
there is.
Like you have to appreciate, I will pay a cover charge at a Publix to avoid going to Walmart. Okay. And then when I'm in a Walmart, I'm bitching about being there. So people that are like really upset about having to go do their own recruiting or using Indeed and not finding quality candidates can't really complain because there is an option and your time is valuable. So instead of the money that you spend wasting time on mediocre candidates, you could spend on the fee for the hard work to be done through a company like yours.
Yeah, and I think the values of a staffing agency are a lot, and I think a lot of times I've been in, you know, internal talent acquisition and staffing agency, and there's this stigma between HR professionals, right? Like, you know, I could do the job, you know, if you're an in-house recruiter, right? I could do the job, I could find the candidates, but you're also working with 50 other roles, right? And you have to see these hiring managers quite often. And I think where staffing agencies are is just we're just a help, right? You might have a role that you need to cover quickly, and I think staffing agencies have like, well, at least Growing Talent in particular, we have this process in place where we give you all the attention and your role all the attention, and we try to bring candidates within 2 3 weeks, and by the time they talk to you, they've already talked to 3 people. We
Right.
know that they're not gonna ghost, you know, most likely they're not gonna ghost, and you know, we know that they're excited to join your company because we vetted them out. And I think to do that within 2 to 3 weeks, you know, helps a lot, not only to the business, right? Because we found your talent right away and you get to, you know, continue your operations as usual. But also to the recruitment's in-house, right? Because they get to focus on other roles that might be more pressing that needs their attention. Essentially, we could just take that burden off.
And you're sourcing the people. Like I know I've talked to Ty about it a little bit, but like his role is like, I need to go find those qualified people that are open to work on LinkedIn. You know, he's got like you pay for the extra LinkedIn options or whatever, and you're like constantly looking for people who are looking for work. Not everybody, like I haven't gone a long amount of time, I don't think Justin has either, without employment. So I've never had to use like an online site like Indeed before, thank goodness. But I can imagine if you don't have the perfect keywords, you're going to get just lost in the mix. So if you don't have like Microsoft Office versus Microsoft Word, nobody uses Excel anymore. No, I mean, like they do, but if you don't have the right keywords, your resume could be like vanilla and just passed off if they're looking for keywords in Indeed. And instead there's a heartbeat attached to a recruiting company where you can like kind of poach people if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You
In the
know?
long run, even though it might seem like a little bit more cost up front, you're really saving a lot of money.
That's
Huge.
you brought up a good point because whenever you lose an employee, right, it's around $14,000 that you're losing just in the time that it takes to train a new employee, right?
Oh yeah,
That
turnaround
person taking the
sucks.
whole burden as that person is out, right? Getting extra responsibilities, and also like the burnout period of the other employees, right? I think um, it's been studied that it's like around $14,000 per turnover rate, right? Like per turnover per candidate, so employee, sorry. So I think in order to in order to quickly fill those gaps and save money as a company, it's important to work with staffing agencies just to ensure that your operations keep moving and you don't lose more money. And I think that's what happens when you lose great talent as well.
What if it's like, what if I'm like, listen, I want you to find me a job, but I'm like, I want to be like up here.
Yeah.
Like, find me a C-suite position. Do you do that?
Yes, we definitely
You
do.
go straight for the top?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Justin wants to be a CEO of a giant cannabis brand. I mean,
no,
we could put him out there,
Why
but
are
it's
you laughing,
funny
Jerry? Why is that funny? Just
because
kidding.
because he knows it's, don't put him on the spot and make him nervous. So if I was like, okay, I've got experience in the cannabis industry, I've got knowledge, know-how, I'm in this market, but I can't, I don't want to say that I'm above being in the mix of like this entry level. Do you staff for C-suite and upper level executive management and admin?
yes, that's what we specialize in as
Damn.
well, like C-suite, you know, placements and stuff like that. We place a lot of vice presidents and things like that. And I think, working with someone that is looking for those type of positions, right? It's a lot of consulting, right? What do you specifically do? What can you, what is your strategy around your approach to certain problems, right? And I think
Mhm.
also finding the right place where this person will flourish and the leadership will flourish, right? I think that's super important. And I think that's when the recruiter, when it comes with a C-suite type of position, right, you have to be more of a consultant to the CEO, for example, or the CFO,
Mhm.
right? And kind of also adjust the expectations based on the company that they want to go, right? So, for example, if you want to go be the CFO of a startup, right, it's about, hey, well, what type of financial experience do you have growing businesses, right?
None.
And if you do, right, and if you don't, what can we do long term to ensure that you have that experience? And then work backwards from there, right? So I will never dock anybody for saying I want to be a CEO. I think go for it, right? Goals, do it. But
I
then work
mean, you
backwards.
gotta kind of be realistic with them though. Like
Yeah,
if somebody's like fresh out of high school and they're like, I want to be a CEO of a marijuana company, put me down. Like, and here's my resume. You have to be realistic and say, okay, you might not be there yet, but you do qualify for like something around this area, and there's room for movement.
exactly. And I think, I can't doc if someone wants to be CEO and that's their goal, right? I will never deter them from their goals, right? Or their dreams. I think that I'm not a dream killer, right? If anything, I'm going to help you accomplish them, but I will bring in that realistic approach sometimes where I have to be like, hey, in order to achieve a CEO, you have to have certain type of experience. How can I help you achieve that experience? Let's talk about the first steps, baby steps, right?
You've worked at like CVS and McDonald's, and you want to run a giant multi-billion-dollar company as the leader. And finding a CEO position might be difficult because that means the company lost their CEO. But like
Yeah,
if I apply for like a CFO position and I'm horrible at math and numbers, no experience whatsoever, you're
May
gonna have
not
to
be the
break
right
the news to
position.
me.
yeah, and it's aligning that expectation. Like, hey, it's going to take you years to get there,
Yeah.
but
If you want
not
to start liking math.
yeah, I mean, you did say they graduate out of college, so hopefully they already have their ducks in a row. But also, um, you know, with CFOs and stuff like that, like people that want to go into the industry, you know, in any industry in that capacity, it's about seeing how they best align, where their skills fit the best,
Mhm.
they could flourish, right? And I think starting obviously, when I ever work with high school students, which I do part of growing talent sometimes, uh, I never want to say don't do this because that's what's been told. That's why I became a recruiter because they were like, maybe your skill set aligns more to being a carpenter. I remember I took that test in high
Oh, they
school.
tried to trade school you.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want to pigeonhole. Like, don't kill dreams, essentially, right? I think that's important, right? Like, if you want to be a CEO, be a CEO, right? But you have to put in the work.
Work.
Someone told me very early on in my career that the first 15 years of your career is going to be grunt work, right? And you have to fall in love with the boredom, right? And that's what sometimes you have to do it as a recruiter. Like, hey, you have to put in the work. You want to be a CEO. Let's start you off. Let's put you in a position. I'll work with. I have clients. I mean, candidates that I've worked with for years, right? And
Yeah.
literally today I talked to someone that I placed at a dispensary, and they've grown to be a GM, right?
That's awesome.
And no prior experience in the cannabis industry, no prior experience as general manager, but they're working their way up, right? And it's about setting those expectations, yes, but also how can I help you get there? And I think that's very important for any recruiter to do, right? How can I help you and work with you long term to achieve your goals? I think that's super important.
I like the motivation that you give people and on the back end, because I know I've talked to a bunch of recruiting companies. I know how my dad's company and they operate, but they're not in cannabis. And that support, that longevity of having someone that you can bounce questions off of. What should I do next? How should I, be able to move up in a company? That's a big deal. It's good for people that are trying to find positions to have an ally instead of always always kind of floating on their own, hoping to be recognized. That's
You'd be a
really
good
good.
talent agent, Jerry.
Yeah, I feel like you could do a lot of stuff. I know that you're happy with what you're doing, but I'm saying like you could be a life coach. Like you could just call me in the morning and be like, Cynthia, you're gonna be the best Cynthia you can be today, and you're gonna go out there and you're gonna grind and you're gonna kill it, and you're gonna boss babe. Okay,
Hey,
bye. Have a good day. Bye.
I think that's part of. I always have. I think I posted on LinkedIn the other day. If your recruiter does not hype you up, get another recruiter. I really do think, because I think we started this whole podcast with how nerve-wracking it is to interview.
Are you still
And-
nervous?
No, I'm pretty cool.
See,
now.
that happens to every single guest. They're always like kind of nervous. And then at the end, they're like dropping the F-bomb and, I'm just kidding. But I'm glad you kind of eased up because it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I think, it's about being comfortable with whoever you're talking to, and also being comfortable with yourself, right? And I think if someone hypes you up like that and just talks to you and is real with you, I think that matters, and also matters for the industry as well, especially in cannabis. Like I said, trust is all. So I trust you as a candidate that you're going to do great things for the cannabis industry, and we'll work together to grow this industry together. So I love what I do, I really do, because I get to have cool conversations with people every day and see their career growth, right? And I think that's great.
That's good.
Right.
Well, it's been.
Go
Go ahead, Justin.
All right. So you were going to say it's been great talking to
Well,
you.
I was going to sign
all
off because
that.
we went over, but I love that dog. I feel like he has to go to the bathroom though.
No, he just wants my attention. I know.
Oh, okay.
But
Look how
last
cute
question
his
for you.
face is. Who's a good boy? You want a treat?
Last and most important question of the day: Cubs or White Sox?
White Sox.
Oh, you don't hear that too often.
Yep.
It's all the way.
My aunt actually
Wrong answer, but it's okay.
My aunt was a babysitter for the Sox players, and she used to always get me tickets, so I have to say Sox. And that was right there for like the 2005 playoffs. So love the Sox.
I have no baseball affiliation, so I don't even have an opinion for the first time ever.
I grew up going to
Go them.
Chicago quite often, and we would go to both the White Sox and the Cubs, but my family was more of a Cubs fan. But back in the day, they didn't have lights in the park. So sometimes, if we could only go to nighttime games, we'd go to the White Sox if they were in town.
Yeah, no. So I love the Cubs as well, but I like going to Cubs games because it's a different feel. It's one of the oldest stadiums out there, so it's a pretty cool feel to be in that field and kind of just, I don't know, there's a vibe to the Cubs, but I do like the White Sox because you could tailgate, and I think part of any game is tailgating, and I think, what's a game without tailgating? So that's why I prefer the Sox stadium overall.
I'm outdoorsy. I like getting drunk outside. I'm outdoorsy like that.
Yeah. Did you ever catch a ball while you were at one of the games?
No, never had.
Come on, Justin.
I used to bring.
Done that.
I always brought my glove with me. Never caught one though, but came close a few times.
How funny would it be if you brought your own glove and your own ball, and then when it comes your way, you just like hold it up and you're like, "It was me the whole time." Ace to get the ladies.
They give it to the little kid next to them. Would you do that, Justin?
Justin would not. Okay, he would say he would do it, just like me, I'm not going to pretend I'm any more noble than I really am. If I caught a ball, which would be highly unlikely, and there's a child, a wheelchair child sitting next to me, okay, a Make-A-Wish wheelchair child is sitting next to me.
With their glove,
I'm going to
right?
with their glove held up with their nursing assistant, hoping them held up. I'm going to think, okay, actually, I'm going to think twice about it, but I'll probably still give them the ball. But then after they're gone, I'm getting that ball back. I'm sorry. I'm a horrible person. I'm never going to be able to be placed in any position whatsoever with any company after.
I think I would give the kid the ball.
If the camera's on me, I'm giving the ball to the kid.
But
if the
when I was
camera's not
doing
on
it,
me,
I'm
thinking
the
a
kid,
few
right?
minutes and then I'll do it.
I was the kid with the little glove, waiting for that ball.
I'm sorry. Okay, you have to have something like slightly wrong with you for me to give you the ball, or the camera has to be on me. Let's just be honest here. Like, I'm not going to go looking around for a child to give the ball to. I'm just really proud. I caught it.
They're sitting
camera,
next to you,
the
and they have their little glove and they're kind of pulling on your shirt.
Like Tiny Tim, like, God bless us. Yeah. I guess if it's on camera, I'm going to do the right thing. And if I already got the camera footage of catching it, that's like gold right there. I look like celebrity. Go ahead.
I would probably sell it to the kid. Like, hey, you want this ball? $50.
Yeah.
Welcome to your first lesson.
You should throw it past the kid. Be like, go get it. That's a mic drop moment, and I think that you'd be a G for sure. Probably get kicked out of the stadium.
Probably.
You'd be like,
well, if I got hit in the face with a ball,
I grew up on the south side. I'm keeping this ball.
Yeah, he's like, my ball. If I got hit in the face with a ball, I better have every one of those players in my hospital room ready to sign it. You're going to mess with the money maker. I want everyone's signature. Everybody, even if they weren't playing, come over and sign everything. Because I'd be pissed if they didn't sign and they broke my face. We'll end with that.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
You were a great guest. I am stoked that I finally got to interview Jerry Garcia from Grateful Recruiting. And I love that dog, Ringo Star. I thought he was going to jump out the window. And I was like, oh gosh, I can't watch this on video. But he did great. He's going to be YouTube famous here in about a couple hours. And I'm really glad we got to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Ty,
we're very grateful.
Well
That's
done.
Good.
All right. Ty made a great suggestion. This is Cynthia Brewer signing off for the Marijuana Mind. Jay Nasty, your turn.
Keeping it lean, keeping it green.
You actually got it right this time. Jesus. Have you been practicing?
No, in the mirror.
Well done. Thanks again, Jerry. And you have a wonderful day.